1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Got it. Thank you, buddy. Who's here today? Got it.
Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by.
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, I'll talk a lot about the home teams, the Saints, LSU. Hope we get the Tulane as well. And we've got a great guest to break it down for you. Sean Fazan of Fox 8 Sports is our guest tonight. And, of course, we'll take your phone calls a little bit later on in the program. Sean, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us as always. Let the folks know a little bit about what's going on over at Fox 8. I know you guys are... Been in the middle of it since training camp, and of course we're winding it down now, but and then it starts to peak up again.
It is that time of year. August is that month that just kind of flies by. It's like, whoa, where did it go? We are all in when it comes to Saints training camp. We have our shows from 4, 5, 9, at 4, 5, 9, and 10, our regular newscast. We have our Final Play show. We also have our Final Play app, which has all of our stuff. You get my blog, Juan's blog, Chris Hagan's blog, Garland Gillen's blog, everything, all Saints, all black and gold. And we also have fox8live.com, and we're doing the Saints preseason as well. So I'm a part of that pregame show along with Juan Kincaid, Curtis Lofton, the three broadcasters, Sean Kelly, John Stinchcomb, and Joel Myers. And we are just this is our time to shine, right? So this is what we do.
Well, one thing that you've had the advantage of doing is to be at every practice, pretty much, and been on the road with the team as well. You've had a chance to see the Texans and Saints today, the Chargers and the Saints last week. Well, let's take today first, and let's talk about injuries, because a lot of people are worried about Marshawn Lattimore and Ryan Ramczyk, who went out in today's practice. You have an update on Lattimore?
I'm told, and this was just recently over the last few minutes, that he got lightheaded today at practice, not considered serious. Don't know if he's going to play yet on Saturday. I don't know if you're overly cautious in that regard or what. And in regards to Ryan Ramczyk, he left as well. I haven't got an update on his injury status, but both of those guys have really started taking that next step in training camp. They've kind of turned the corner in their development. So any setback would be tough. So hopefully it's not as bad. And in Lattimore's case, it doesn't look like it's going to be serious, but obviously you got to still monitor it.
If you're not keeping track of what's going on at Fox 8, Sean Vazana on the Final Play app, he broke down Ryan Ramczyk's plays within the preseason. We got a chance to see that on Fox 8 Sports the other night. Sean, tell us a little bit about that breakdown.
Look, I wanted to go back and look at Ryan Ramczyk because I tried to watch him a good bit during that game because I think his development is key. And I went back and charted his snaps, 25 snaps. 21 of those I would consider positive snaps. 4 of those I would consider negative snaps. The problem is 4 negative snaps for an offensive tackle can lead to a disaster if you're not careful, and that's exactly what happened. So his 4 mistakes actually appear to be bigger than what they actually appeared. They were easier to notice because he was obviously on an island. Look, I thought the first play of the game was probably the best play. He was able to kind of shield Melvin Ingram away and kind of push him out and spin him around as Alvin Kamara was able to cut right behind him and make that beautiful run, 50-yard touchdown to start the game. He did the exact same thing on the very next play. They used him outside alone. They used him in a 2 tight end set with 2 tight ends next to him. They used him, in different sort of formations. He was able to get to the next level, kind of showed his Wisconsin roots against Corey Leggett, pushed him back, flipped him around. Now, speed rushers, he's very light on his feet. He seems to do well with speed rush, turn the corner type guys, as we saw when Bosa tried to do it and Ingram tried to do it. However, where he struggled was speed to power. And he said it after the game that Melvin Ingram has good speed to power move. It seems to when a rusher is able to kind of set him up, he raises up, his pad level is high, and allows the pass rusher to get up under him. And it really kind of pushed him back quite a few times. It was 4 plays where that happened. So I think all in all, I thought it was the perfect preseason start for a rookie because you passed the test, but there was also just enough mistakes to teach off of, and I thought it was a good overall start for Ryan Ramczyk.
You talk about speed to power. Well, how did he fare out on bull rushes?
Bull rush is tough. It was Tinny Palapui, I believe his name was. It wasn't even a speed to rush. It was a straight power move right through. Again, it's about leverage. I think he's going to have to be coached a little bit to keep those pads down when he's going up against a bull rusher. Some of that you can. With film study, you'll be able to know who prefers the bull rush, who prefers the speed rush, and you can better prepare. But it seems like when he had to raise up and open up, he allowed himself to get a little bit vulnerable for the defensive ends to get up under his pads. And look, it pushed him right back into Chase Daniel a couple times.
Yes. When healthy, Armstead doesn't need a back or a tight end to chip. When he hasn't been healthy, the Saints have done that to be able to help him. How do you see the Saints utilizing Ramczyk going into the beginning of the season if the injury today is not a serious injury and he is going to be there week 1 against Minnesota? Will we see tight ends and running backs chipping on his side to give him a little bit of help?
Yes, I would think. I think he can handle it on his own, but I think, look, week 1, first NFL start, ruckus crowd,
Yes.
Monday Night Football against a very good front 7. I would think that's going to be the game where the Saints, if they're going to go conservative with him, that's the one you're going to have to go with. And Josh Hill is a very good blocker off the line of scrimmage. Colby Fleener has actually improved in that regard. Humana Wanui is adequate in that regard as well. So they have adequate guys that can truly help him along the line of scrimmage when it comes to chipping. I think ultimately he'll be a guy that will grow into his role when he's back on the field. But to start, I know if I were a head coach, I'd say, he's a rookie, left tackle. Let's give him some help.
Let's stay with this, and let's go with the rest of the rookie class. It's kind of a cliche because we don't really know. It really takes about 3 years to really know how good of a rookie class you have. But right now, this rookie class, at least on paper, looks as good as it did in 06. This could be one of those cornerstone rookie classes. When you look at, again, the number of players that are contributing, in my mind, when I look at and I'm breaking down the roster, I'm saying I believe that maybe every one of those rookies may make this team. You've had your mock 53. You've watched these guys intensely during camp. Talk about the rookie class, and is there a possibility we may see the entire class make the team? Not on the practice squad, but make the team?
I think so. And as a matter of fact, I was talking with one of the reporters last week. I think this might be the first year we don't see an undrafted rookie make the team. Arthur Millett's probably got the best chance, depending on the numbers at cornerback, but usually there's 1 or 2 guys that really outplay a late-round draft pick, and they work their way on. That hasn't happened this year with the emergence of Al-Quaneen Muhammad. Look, Alvin Kamara, what else can you say? And I got to say, I was very high on him leading up to the draft because I thought he was a Darren Sproles type. I underestimated him. He is an every down back with great patience, very smooth, and a burst that gets to that 5th gear when he gets to the open field that, as we saw in the first play of the game, I think it catches you off. I think he goes to sleep a little bit with his patience, and then boom, he takes off. So I think Alvin Kamara is much more than we originally thought he was going to be.
I agree.
The Sproles, the Reggie Bush comparisons, that's great, but he's a much better pure running back than any of us realize. And I think he may have even been underutilized at the University of Tennessee because his stats did not reflect that.
Right.
So I love Marcus Williams. He's got a nose for the football. We talked about Ramczyk and Lattimore. Hendrickson is a guy I think that's going to work his way onto the field eventually, and Al-Quaneen has really because there was a period of about 8 or 9 practices where you were like, okay, maybe this is a guy going to the practice squad, but I think he's turned the corner. Yeah. And Alex Anzalone, who I think is going to be in the mix for playing time, if not start, is certainly he has really caught on to what they're doing. And I asked him after the first preseason game, I said, you don't look overwhelmed. You don't look like a rookie. I said, what do you attribute that to? He goes, it's just not that much different than what I was used to at Florida, and it was just an easy transition. And the biggest thing I see with him is he trusts what he sees, and he does not overthink the situation, and that's why he's on the field.
Let's stay with the linebacker position, because I think that is when you look at from last year to this year, more quality depth than I think we've seen. I think you look at an immediate upgrade in terms of talent with the starters as well. What's your take? As I've mentioned, you got a chance to see these guys up close in person. What's your take on the linebacking core?
Better players, better coached, better scheme, better. Period. I can't recall a performance, and I know it was preseason, I know it was Kellen Clemens, and I know they had already practiced against those guys 2 other times, but I can't remember a performance that good from a set of Saints linebackers than we saw Sunday night. Manti Te'o was playing like a man possessed. A.J. Klein has really taken over. It's clicked for him. It's a new team, but he's comfortable now, and he's really got the scheme down pat, and he's playing 2 positions. And then obviously you saw what Craig Robertson did. There were a lot of – you look at those guys' stats, and you say, wow, that was good. But if you really watch that game, there were a lot of plays they made that didn't end up in a stat that set up other players to make plays. So the linebackers are better overall just in terms of quality depth, and they're better coached. The player I'm worried about right now is Stephon Anthony, because honestly I don't know how the coaches can realistically look at him and say he is up to speed with everyone else.
Right. Well, let's talk about that for a moment. He's injured right now, and there's a really good possibility that he may be on the IR, or they may just outright just give up on him. You got Big Hill, who's out there as well, who's played well on special teams. That's a tough cut. How many do you think they keep, and who are the odd men out?
It's a great question. I got him at 6 because with the way that you have to play defense nowadays, you don't necessarily. It'd be great to keep 7, but I don't. With the emergence of nickel packages, I don't think you can keep 7. I think it's 6. Stupar is a phenomenal special teams player who, for a linebacker, has a nose for the football. Yeah. He is always around the ball. I know he doesn't always make the interception, but he always seems to have his hands on the ball. I still have Michael Marty on there as a special teamer because I think we know what he can do as a special teamer, and I think the Saints know that as well. Last week was the first week I really looked at Adam Bighill and I said maybe he's got an outside shot if he can really contribute more on special teams. To me, the odd man out is Stephon Anthony, and it's tough because I don't think it's entirely his fault. I think last year really damaged him mentally. But you can't look at what's there right now and say Stephon Anthony is anywhere close to any of the rest of these guys, especially since he can't play special teams.
Right. It seems to have always been mental with Anthony more than physical. Would they be willing, maybe you think, to stash him on IR for a year, let him still get the mental part of the game down? Multiple defensive coordinators over a few years, new coach, obviously a linebacker coach has been a much better teacher than maybe what we saw with Joe Vitt, and maybe a year just to absorb what they're doing, and maybe next year, healthy, giving him an opportunity to maybe go again, or it's just one of those things, you know what, you just give up on him at this point. We've moved on because we've upgraded the position in terms of talent.
Well, you upgraded the position because you weren't sure what you had. And clearly it was a type of year where it had to happen for Stephon Anthony. So I would lean towards they will probably move on from him, if not try to get something for him. But what are you going to get for a guy like that? He's been injured. You can't trade guys injured. And what would you really give up for Stephon Anthony?
Right.
Although I do think, if he can somehow get back into the right sense of mind where he was his rookie year, I think his career is salvageable. I just don't know with the bodies that they have on the roster if he's worth it to keep around, especially since you have guys that have clearly outplayed him. But to keep him on IR, I mean, look, I guess it's a possibility, but I don't know if that would ever happen.
Keep going back to Mark Fields, man. Mark Fields was lost in the weeds here in New Orleans. I mean, great athleticism, mentally couldn't get the game down. You could see that there were flashes at times that this guy was going to be a really good linebacker. He moves on, he matures as a player, and he has a pretty decent career with a couple teams. And you hate to see a guy like that with so much speed and athleticism, and they just can't get the mental part of the game down. And really, I think you made a good point. Damage was a little damaged by what's been going on. So that's self-inflicted wounds by the Saints on their own first-round pick. I would hope that if there's a chance to stash this guy for a year, you stash him and you give him just one more shot in training camp.
Well, if that's a legitimate option, maybe they'll consider that. I know from talking to a few people within the organization last year, I mean, he was gone mentally because of the move. He did not know what he was doing. He was not comfortable at the strong side. And combined with the fact that there was, he wasn't necessarily getting proper teaching from the linebackers coach at that time. He's building himself back up from a self-esteem standpoint. Had a good start to camp. Excuse me. So we'll see how it ends up. It's unfortunate he got injured because I think if he hadn't got injured, he would have a chance to make this roster. But right now, I just don't know what you do.
You look at the linebackers right now, you see high IQ, you see athleticism, you see versatility. And that's something they've lacked here for a long, long time in terms of the linebacking core. And you can mask some deficiencies in other positions on the field if you have guys that can do that. And they seem to be interchangeable as well. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. A.J. Klein can play the strong side. He can play the Mike and nickel. Manti Te'o, I think, is more of a middle than anything else. But Craig Robertson is versatile. Alex Anzalone is versatile. So you have players here that aren't. First off, if you talk to any of them, I think you used the perfect word, football IQ. They have it, and you can see just by the way they were anticipating the snap against the Chargers, how active they were, and how they just seemed to be one step ahead. Now a little bit of that you can contribute to. Okay, we saw a few of their tendencies in practice, but when was the last time you saw aggressive linebackers like that with the Saints? True. You just haven't.
True. And I wondered, and it's a different system now with a different coach coming in, Lynn, how much Manti Te'o knew about what was going on the other side of the ball, but then I had to remind myself, new head coach, new system. He may know the players and their tendencies, but he doesn't know the plays, so to speak.
Yeah, and look, he may know the players, but he wouldn't necessarily know the plays. Look, all those facts. I talked to Kenny Vaccaro today. He said, look, we're happy with where we're at, but we realize what happened Sunday. We realize who we play against. So that's another thing, is this team, this defense in particular, is very self-aware, which I think is a very underrated quality, because if you know where you are and you know your reputation, then you know you got to work to fix it. So I think they're in a good spot, but let's not kid ourselves right now. This is not going to be the number one ranked defense in the NFL.
No, it's not. But a great lead into the safeties, because that seems like another versatile position on this team where you got a little bit of depth. Talk about the safety position.
Yeah, I like the group, and I like the emergence of Chris Banjo as a special teams guy who is not. It's not like he's lost as a safety when you put him on the field. He had a pass breakup against the Chargers. Had an incredible game, and it's to the point where he has basically supplanted or replaced, Eric Harris on my roster, my 53-man roster. I think he's the fifth safety. You got Vaccaro, who I spoke with, as I said today. He did some off-season work at Unbreakable. It's an MMA style training. He said it's really helped him, and he just looks, I don't know, more active, more violent, for lack of a better term.
Contract year for him.
Exactly. Raphael Bush is a very steady player. You saw on that fourth down play, can do a lot. He's just a very good glue guy to have. And the guy I'm excited about is Marcus Williams. We haven't seen him get his hands on the ball yet in the game, but that is coming because he gets his hands on a lot in practice.
Yeah,
and of course Von Bell as well.
Von Bell as well, yeah, no doubt. And again, you got some versatility there. You got guys that seem like they have a high IQ, and between the linebackers and the safeties, you can do a lot with that now. Especially again if maybe you're lacking the ability to rush the passer from the outside. We've seen Vaccaro in that position before. You may be able to see some linebackers there as well. And, of course, they haven't had a ball-hawking safety since Darren Sharper for the most part.
Yeah, and look, I trust Dennis Allen's ability to adapt to his players. He's got some creativity in his scheme, and he seems to have a pretty good ability to be complex, but teaching it with simplicity where the players seem to understand. So I think there's a few things, knock on wood, you stay healthy, you can do with the personnel that you have.
The best thing at this point when you look at the cornerback position is a lot of guys got playing time last year, and it looks like at least through training camp they've taken the next step. Now, can they go on the field and can they they seem, from what I understand, they've been a little bit handsy at practice. Okay, can they curtail that and still be physical? And when in terms of guarding other receivers, give us your synopsis on the cornerback position, and how devastating is it not to have Delvin Breaux for maybe the first 4 or 6 weeks of the season?
Yeah, I think that's tough because I think you're banged up. He was supposed to be your number one corner. To not have him for the first 4 weeks, you got to adapt to life without him. I happen to believe he's a legitimate cornerback in the NFL. Some people seem to have kind of lost a little bit of faith in him given the injuries.
Only because he's brittle.
Yeah, and that's true. But I think the one thing they can't do is rush him back. I know it's a 4 to 6 weeks time frame. Last year he came back too soon. Look what happened.
Right.
Look, I like the emergence of Lattimore. King Crawley is a scrappy guy I think that can play. P.J. Williams is a very underrated player. I think if he can stay healthy, that's a legitimate starting cornerback that can also kick inside to play nickel, which is not easy to do when you talk about playing outside and inside. Devontae Harris is the other, and Sterling Moore has really had an underrated camp.
So underrated.
He has really had a good camp. He had a great practice today. So it's not as strong as they would have been if you add Delvin Breaux, but I do think you can, if you have better linebacker play, better front seven play, I think you can manage without Delvin Breaux on the back end and cornerback.
Middle of the defense is obviously the biggest part of the defense. Let's talk about Onyemata, Davidson, Rankins, and McDaniel would be maybe the fourth guy on the inside. What do you think?
That's a tough one. Defensive tackle, it's Onyemata, Rankins, Davison. And then I actually am starting to like Mitchell Lowen.
Okay, I like him too.
Now, he's a young guy. You may want a veteran because it's a young group.
Yeah.
So I could see McDaniel.
And a run-stopping veteran.
Exactly.
Which is what
McDaniel is
is.
the guy, and he's got his hands on quite a few passes in those games. Now,
6'6", over 300 pounds.
I think what helps, this is in my latest roster projection, I only have him keeping 4 because of the versatility of some of the ends. You can kick in a Darryl Tapp. You can kick in a Alex Okafor. You can kick in a Cam Jordan in certain situations. And given the state of the NFL, maybe it's better to have 6 defensive ends and 4 D tackles as opposed to 5 and 5. We'll see how the numbers shake out. But that 4th D tackle is going to be interesting. And I don't think they keep 5, but if they keep 4, it's either going to be out, at least in my mind right now, it's Lowen or McDaniel.
Right. How big of a loss, Nick Fairley?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're talking about he could really be sort of an exclamation point right now if he was on this. To have another beast in the middle, and Sheldon Rankins has really flashed the last couple weeks. I think he had a really good practice today. To have that dynamic duo together would be great. But I think the organization's moved on from it. They have to.
Yeah, you have to.
He's not here. He's not available. Would be nice to have. Would have been nice to know this stuff before they signed any contract, but it didn't happen. And look, the season's here, so he's not coming back. You got to do the best you can.
Yeah. Talk about the ends. Talk about the pass rushers. All
right. So I look. The one wild card I always had was Haoli Kikaha because I think he's got skills. I really do. It's just a matter of his injury history. I think he's played well this camp. He's had a few times where he's turned the corner. I know he drew the holding call against the Browns in week 1. I really like him. I really like Alex Okafor. He's got nice speed off the edge. And you talk about Cam Jordan, who is as steady as they come. He had 2 sacks again today. Trey Hendrickson, who's a rookie that we talked about earlier that I like. And then do you use like a Darryl Tapp, a veteran? Do you bring back an Obum Gwacham who can speed? So I think it's a big question mark as who is going to be the productive player opposite of Cam Jordan. But I think at least you have a decent supply, if you will, to at least pick from. And right now, as much of a need as it was, I'm okay with where they stand right now at defensive end.
What about coaching on the defensive side of the ball?
Like I said, Dennis Allen to me is a very good coordinator. He seems to know his personnel pretty well. The D-line coach Nielsen, I think he's very hands-on. Players seem to have really adjusted to him. And you see it with some of the play. It's a better pass rush. They're getting pursuit.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a good hire. And we already talked about Mike Nolan. I think that is night and day. It's just how sure themselves they seem, how polished they seem, and just how much better they seem at that linebacker position. So I think Mike Nolan might be the most underrated hire in all of football this year.
And the secondary coach, obviously.
And Aaron Glenn is very hands-on as well.
And look, it's gotten them to be an aggressive group.
Indeed. That's going to be a team. It wouldn't surprise me if they take a few holding penalties this year because they're coaching that.
Right.
It's the old Seattle Seahawks mindset where we're going to get called for a few, but they're not going to call you every play.
Right.
And there's going to be a little bit of that. Now, you hope it doesn't come up in a crucial part of the game.
Well, you want to set the tone, though.
Exactly.
You want them knowing going into the game that you're going to be a physical defensive back.
And you're going to have to fight during this route. You're not just going to run right past me.
And officials will look at that and say, well, we know this is how they play. This is their MO. And we saw the Seahawks get away with it for years and years and years.
Oh, yes. There's no doubt about it. So I think they're going to be a hands-on press team. And they're basically going to say, beat us. And if you beat us, great. But you're going to have to earn it to beat us.
biggest question mark on offense, the offensive line, and not really the starters, but again, the early season depth is what I've talked about. Eventually, Ramczyk will move to a backup role when Armstead comes back. But until then, man, I tell you what, it's slim pickings behind the starters. Unger's got to come in and play well immediately without a lot of snaps in the preseason, if at all. Talk about the offensive line, especially the depth. You've seen the backup linemen. Who can this team count on to be those swing guy and maybe play outside?
There's one guy. That's it. Calamete is the only guy you can count on. That's unfortunate.
That's not going to get it done.
That's just the way it is. I don't see how you could. I guess he's on your roster now, so you could keep Laribius, though the snap issues have become epidemic. I mean, it's really something to see. I don't know what's going on there. And then look, Khalif Barnes and Bryce Harris that's if they have to play today, Khalif Barnes really it just was no match for Jadeveon Clowney when Ryan Ramczyk went down. So I actually like the front line, and with Teron Armstead, you got decent depth with Calamete and Ramczyk as backups, but. You're right. I think there's some depth issues. The key is getting Unger back. Right. Getting Unger back, I think, can really kind of solidify that whole O-line. Even if Ramczyk is still, you're still treating him like a rookie, I think the other four can certainly kind of hold up his weight a little bit, and I think they can be productive.
What about the wide receiver position? A lot of people are raving about Brandon Coleman. Hopefully he can do what he's done consistently in the game than what he's done in practice. How many do you think they keep, and ultimately who do you think it is? I know Corey Fuller's been in the mix. I've talked about him on this program and my radio show since they grabbed him off the practice squad from Detroit. But he's not a guy that plays multiple positions for him in terms of special teams, right? So he may be an odd man out. Talk a little bit about that.
Corey Fuller?
Yes.
Yeah. Corey Fuller and Tommy Lee Lewis are probably battling for that fifth wide receiver spot.
How can you cut Lewis at this point?
Exactly. He's outplayed him. Fuller had some issues with injuries. Tommy Lewis has earned it. I mean, he had a 10-catch performance against Cleveland. He had a couple more catches against L.A. He had a good practice against L.A. So Tommy Lewis, to me, has earned it. I think your first four wide receivers are pretty clear. And then there's a pretty clear line there. Michael Thomas, there's no sophomore slump right now.
Everybody's been talking about the slant route. Talk a little bit about that.
It's unguardable. I mean, I've seen one player stop it, and that was Marshawn Lattimore. Maybe he's picked up on something, and that was where they kind of jammed the line of scrimmage, and he was able to knock it down in one-on-ones. But the way he's able to run that route, get his body in position, he catches the ball in traffic very well because of his hands, and the way he's able to break that first tackle, or if they're playing off, has space and really can run, and he's a very violent runner for a receiver. I mean, he really runs hard. So he's got the slant route down. That's his route. But I talked to him last week, and I said, everybody knows your slant route, but the dig route, the slant route, the out route. I said, have you developed the route tree? He goes, I don't want to have a single route in my arsenal. That's my weakness. So I think that's a guy that's no sophomore slump. Will he get 95 catches again? Who knows? But I do think he's going to have another productive season as well.
So you think at this point it's Tommy Lee Lewis is the number 5 guy?
Yeah, because he can contribute to special teams in the pinch as well.
What about Lampman? Because he was a guy that, again, was a special teams player. Is he odd man out?
He hasn't been around.
Right.
And a player like that, I mean, I think they like his skill set as a gunner, but you got to be available. And you know how it is, especially for the bottom tier of that roster. You got to be available when there's a chance to play.
2 quarterbacks for 3.
2. There's no need for 3, especially when you have depth issues at some other positions. You got to keep 2. Delvin Bro, you got to hold a spot for. You can't short-term IR him. You can't PUP him. So you got to hold a spot. So do you keep a 7th corner? Right. Do you keep an extra defensive lineman? Do you keep an extra linebacker we talked about? Right. There's absolutely no need to keep a 3rd quarterback. Ryan Nassif, that Ryan Nassif you saw against LA, that's the Ryan Nassif we've seen all camp. The Browns was an outlier, the Browns game. And Garrett Grayson, I just think he's fallen far behind, and it's just not going to happen for him.
And at this point, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to bring in a young guy that you want to groom, and neither one of those guys are in a position where you can groom those guys to be the heir apparent to Drew Brees.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
And look, they've only done that once in the years Peyton's been here, and that was the first year Garrett Grayson was drafted. You can't cut him his rookie year as a 3rd-round pick as a quarterback, but ultimately there's no need to keep more than 2.
What about tight end? Going to be a tough cut?
Yeah, because look, you got Fleener, who's inconsistent, but he's Fleener. You paid money for him. You can't cut him.
This is really a a determination year for him.
Yes,
one way or the other.
because if
He
you look at
doesn't
his
make
contract, they can
please,
get out of it.
elaborate on that.
Well, the way it's set up is you can realistically get out of it the next year. Wouldn't be a huge dead money hit.
Right.
And it was front loaded, as it normally is. But I think Josh Hill, who's had a very underrated camp. The thing with Josh Hill is you got to watch tape to understand why they value him, because he's able to do a lot of different things. He can be a fullback. He can be an H-back. He can run certain routes. He can run the seam route. He's, as I said earlier, a great blocker. Now, the third tight end is interesting because you have Michael Hu'umanawanui and John Phillips.
Yeah.
Similar players.
Yeah.
Who wins that battle? That's a battle no one's really discussing because it's not the sexiest position in the world, the third tight end. But I think that's going to be a tougher cut than people realize. Right now, I'm leaning towards Human, but I didn't realize this. John Phillips is able to long snap. And so if you needed somebody like that in a pinch, he could do it. So that could be a tiebreaker. I doubt it, but that's going to be a tough cut as well.
Well, running back, I mean, at this point, probably, 5? And plus Kuhn as your fullback?
Well, 5 including Kuhn, right.
5 including
right.
So what you've got Peterson, Ingram, Kamara, Lasco?
Correct, Lasco. Because I like Lasco in special teams. Right. And he's not an explosive player, but if he sees a window, he can get you 7. If you need 3 yards, he'll get you 4. That sort of thing. He's not an explosive guy, and I think he does a good job. He's an underrated blocker in the pass game, but he's going to be a special teams guy as long as he stays healthy. This is about as strong of a running back group that I can remember. Yeah. All these concern about who gets what, how many touches this one gets, how many touches that one gets. Who cares? That's a great problem to have, and Sean Payton will figure that out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Sean, just overall, looking at the offense, your thoughts?
They're right where they're supposed to be. Last year when we were concerned about the interior of the offensive line, that's okay. With Andrews, Pete, Warford, and once Unger comes back, that's okay. Hope Ramczyk is healthy, but I think you're okay at tackles. So it starts up front. Breeze is still as accurate as ever. And I was talking to Jim Henderson, voice of the Saints, at L.A. At the Chargers practice, and you got to really be up close at a practice or a game to really appreciate how good Breeze is because of all the chaos that happens around him. And he's the smallest guy in there in the pocket, and he's able to methodically shred defenses. He's still got that, no arm strength issues. So I think, look, as we all expected, the offense is still going to be a top 5 offense in the NFL. They're going to score their points.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Sean Vazan of Fox 8 Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll be right back after these messages.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or AmcoFenceCompany.com.
TikTok Cafe, located on Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie, is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our menu offers breakfast dishes like our Western omelet made from scratch biscuits, grits, egg sunny side up, and lunch specials like our homemade cheeseburgers with a side of golden brown fries. Don't forget about our weekday lunch special, and that every Tuesday is steak night. TikTok Cafe, open 24/7 at Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, each and every Thursday night with our live broadcast right here on WLAE-TV. That's 6 p.m., 10 o'clock on Cox 130, on Friday night, 9 o'clock statewide on Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock right back here on the mothership WLAE, and of course 2 a.m. on Cox 130. Sean Vazan of Fox 8 Sports, our lone guest tonight. We'll be open the phone lines in just a few minutes for you, so you can ask Sean your own questions about what's going on with the Saints. We'll get to the Tigers in a moment as well. Sean, right now, not expected to play or has not played yet. Ingram, Breeze, Unger, Jordan, Peterson. Expect them to see time against Houston, or are these practices that we see against the Chargers and the Texans supplementing the opportunity for them to get on the field in a preseason game?
Yeah, it's certainly from what Sean Payton has said, what Drew Brees said today. It feels like he's going to get a little work this week because this was not 2 joint practices. It's just a walkthrough tomorrow with the Texans. But if Ramczyk is not ready to go against that front, I'd be a little hesitant. It looks like Ingram, Jordan, I think that'd be safe to say they'll get some playing time. Peterson was he was non-committal. He hasn't played a preseason game in quite some time. Right. So I don't necessarily think he needs preseason.
Well, let me stop you there, because the only thing I worry about Peterson is not, and you want to keep him healthy, okay?
Exactly.
All right, but he's had in his career, he's fumbled a lot. I mean, let's go back to the NFC Championship game, okay? Here in the Dome. The one thing I worry about is contact. Okay, how physical has his own players been with him? Considering again it's practice. The Texans or the Chargers. I just wonder again, just the physicality of being in a game, getting hit, and being able to hold on to the football. I'm not worried about Peterson, the tread on the tire at this point, how they're going to utilize him. I just want to make sure that, again, he's football hardened so that ultimately we're not seeing fumbles early in the season because he hasn't had a chance to be able to carry the ball in a real game.
It's a good point. And, there was a lot of buzz around him signing. The players say he looks great. And then training camp started, and I just kind of kept waiting to the point where I remember whispering to a couple of my coworkers, I haven't seen it yet. Well, in LA, I saw it. It was the first time I saw it. I mean, he took an inside handoff that, look, it wasn't a live tackling drill, but he would have broke that tackle and scored a touchdown in the game. And then today he had the wheel route out of nowhere. I have never seen Adrian Peterson run a wheel route. So, as they say, you don't need to see it every day, but you got to see it. Well, in my eyes, I've actually seen it now with Adrian Peterson. He is definitely a contact runner. Watching him without pads on really doesn't do him justice. Do you want to get him in game shape a little bit? It may be up to him. Does he feel like he needs it? If I'm the head coach, that's probably the route I'm taking. And I think with him, you can defer to him and say, okay, you know your body more than anyone else. Look, perfect world, yes. Go in, get 5 carries, play 20 snaps, get out of there, get some good work in, break a sweat, and we get ready for Minnesota. And you want to make sure he's healthy for Minnesota, obviously. Yes. So it's really up to the player at that point. Does he feel like he needs a little more work? Because we know he's not getting any work the 4th preseason game as well.
The work against the Chargers and the Texans, how big is that?
I think it's huge. This was a good practice today. It was because there was some times where the Texans really showed up. There was some times where
was it chippy? Because in the past they've been chippy.
In the past it has, but it has not. It was not that chippy today. The Saints' 2-minute drill today on offense when Brees took over was the best practice period I've seen from them all camp. Brees was 6 of 7, and the incompletion was an intentional throwdown to Travaris Cadet's feet. It was a busted up screen. They scored a touchdown. Brandon Coleman wide open in the end zone. Defensively, they stopped them twice. So you don't know if you're going to get that situation in the game. That's what Brees told me in L.A. He goes, I'm not in the second preseason game. I'm not going to get a 2-minute drill, and I got to practice it 3 and 4 times here against quality competition. So I think Brees values it. I think the team values it. I think it can be more beneficial, but at the same time, you do want to. There is an element of the lights are on. We got to see who's rising to the occasion here. You don't necessarily need to see what all the veterans, but especially for the younger players, you got to see who's got it.
Yeah, no doubt. Overall strength of the team, in your opinion? Leave quarterback out of the mix here, and then I'd like you to morph into the weakness on this team as well.
That's a good question, because if you take quarterback out of the mix, I think the strongest position is at running back. And if you'd asked me that before Delvin Breaux's injury, I might have said cornerback. But I like the running back position. Alvin Kamara has surpassed any realistic expectation anyone's ever had through 2 preseason games. Mind you, it is 2 preseason games, so we'll see. Be very curious how they use him in the regular season, because we've seen players using a preseason a certain way, and it's not the same way they get used in the regular season. I think Mark Ingram is still capable of 1,000 yards. He'll still get his 200, 220-plus carries. I think Peterson is an upgrade over Tim Hightower. So I like it. I like the running back position. Defensively, at one point I thought it was the secondary, but I'm starting to think the linebackers are going to be the central part of this defense from an IQ standpoint in terms of being the coaches on the field and just playmakers. Because you got guys that you've got players, linebackers that can legitimately play pass coverage. When was the last time we saw that? Yes. Anzalone and AJ Klein as well. So I think those two positions, and also quarterback, two very strong positions.
The team has put an emphasis on special teams for the last few years. We've seen the difference in the coverage units. They've gone out, they pluck guys off practice squads or guys that were maybe being hidden, cut, etc., that had a reputation as being very good special teams players. Banjo is an example of that. We've seen over and over again other guys that have come here that, again, the emphasis was we're not getting better at special teams, we're bringing in those guys. Do you see an upgrade in the special teams? And then, if you would, take the coverage units and break them down, and then obviously the ability to be able to return kicks and punts.
Well, I think you're better in that regard because regardless of his hands issues, I think Teddy Ginn can be a very competent return man. And you also have Kamara, who's a very good return guy, as is Tommy Lee Lewis. So I think your return game will be better. And I think that's such an underrated aspect because as good as the Saints offense is, sometimes they're having to do 12, 13-play drives, 80-yard drives on every drive to score points. I mean, that if you have a turnover or a good return, you can really help and really help maximize your ability to score points. Coverage unit-wise, I mentioned Stupar, I mentioned Chris Banjo. There just seems to be an attack mentality on special teams right now that I think has been lacking for quite some time.
We look at Robinson, Stupar, and Banjo. Those are three guys that played special teams well with their previous teams.
I think Robinson's still going to play some special teams as well.
And they were brought here to play special teams.
Exactly. So I think you've upgraded there.
Marty is another guy.
I still think he hangs on because with his special teams play. Will Lutz is a completely different guy.
Right.
Is a completely the confidence with which he steps on the field is just totally different. I mean, last year you could just look in his eyes and say, this kid is nervous. He's gonna he just doesn't have it. And all of a sudden, they make that coaching change, and he has a great back half of the year. And you talk about the thin line of winning and losing. Those are the points right there, right? When you miss field goals, when you have block kicks that turn into 2-point conversions or touchdowns the other way, those are game-changing plays. And all of a sudden, a 7-9 team could have been a 10-6 team. So it was clearly an emphasis by this team. What happens, though, is when it's a snowball effect. When you have injuries, okay, and you have to get these guys up that normally would play special teams to play offense or defense, you have to get a lower quality of special teams player to fill in those spots. And that's so as great as I like the special teams right now, it's all a matter of how healthy do you remain. Because if you got a healthy team, you probably got a good special teams.
Sean, we've seen the NFC South again rise in terms of quality personnel across the board with every single team. The Saints look like they're a better team right now after 2 preseason games. They look like they've got better personnel. There was a lull there for a while there where they couldn't sign a free agent that really could contribute, where the draft classes were horrible. That caught up with them. You were having more and more undrafted free agents that were making this team out of necessity. We've seen that again. I've said before, I thought that Peyton lost focus for a while there. And when the guy that's captain of the ship loses focus, it happened. They've made changes in the front office. They made changes in the scouting department. They made changes on the coaching staff. Okay, these are all huge changes for a guy that's been around, 12 years now with the organization. How different is this team than previous teams we've seen in the recent past?
Today was the first time I was able to feel comfortable in saying the 2017 New Orleans Saints are a better team than what we've seen over the last 3 years. First time I've seen it, and that wasn't just today's practice. It was a culmination of the 21 practices that I've watched, the games I've seen, and the personnel moves that I've seen. In saying that, I will not say this is a playoff team because of the factors you just mentioned. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is going to be scary with Carolina. Not to mention, I think it was Curtis Samuel and Cam Newton if he's got his shoulder back. I mean, they're going to be scary. We see what Tampa Bay's doing. I mean, they've got a utopia of weapons for Jameis Winston, who is capable of the big interception as much as the big play, but still, he is a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL. And obviously, Atlanta, who I know Saints fans love to pick on because of the 28-3 debacle in the Super Bowl, to me, that's still the best team in the NFC South.
Come on.
So
everybody's counting on a hangover.
This might be the toughest one of the toughest divisions in football right now.
Let's shift gears to the Tigers. I don't think it's any surprise that Danny Etling is going to be the starter for this team. I do think it's a surprise that Miles Brennan gave him as much of a run for his money with the starting position as it is. And, again, you put Loyal Narcisse in there as well. They look like they're at least on paper, at least we've been able to hear, they look like they're pretty good at quarterback. We'll see what happens, how much time those other guys can get outside of Etling, and if Etling can stay healthy throughout the season. Your thoughts on the LSU Tigers, specifically the quarterback position, then we'll get into maybe some of the weaknesses. And I guess the first one we'd have to talk about is the offensive line. We'll talk about that quarterback position.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that Danny Etling won the job. And I think we might be selling him a little short right now. I actually think he might be a little bit better in this offense than people are giving him credit for. He might be great, but I think he's be a little bit better.
Guy.
Can he be Matt Mark or Matt Flynn? Right. I think absolutely. So I think doesn't surprise me. Now, with Miles Brennan elevating to the number 2, which he clearly has, I mean, you probably lose the ability to redshirt him at this point.
Yes.
And the idea that Loyal Narcisse has been able to kind of find his niche a little bit as that wildcat, special package, I think that's huge, especially when you talk about Alabama, having that option available. So I think there's, for the first time, this is as good as I felt about the quarterback position in quite some time. And the fact that both of the freshman quarterbacks that you recruited are going to get playing time this year, that's a pretty impressive quarterback haul in your recruiting class. So now, from what I've heard from, I haven't seen any practice, but, I still have connections up there. It's night and day arm talent-wise. Miles Brennan is by far and away the best pure passer out of the group, without question. And he impressed. He got on the coach's good side because he looked like a guy who was going to be tough to gain some weight when he came in. He put on 20 pounds before he got to campus.
Yes.
We know Loyal Narcisse can run as an athletic player, and Etling's got the experience. So I think overall, you're set at that position, and I feel probably about as good as I've felt about it in a long time, just because of the guys running the offense as well.
The big question is, again, with all the losses along the offensive line, again, young players that are going to be counted on. These guys were 4- and 5-star recruits. You expect them to come in and be able to play at a high level. The big question is going forward, again, how much depth they have, and are they ready in a very complicated offense, okay? Which, again, is more than just what we've seen in the past, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You want to. There's a little trickery involved in this offense, as well as obviously the ability to be able to run the football.
A lot of pre-snap commotion. You see, there's motions, there's shifts, there's reshuffles, there's unbalanced lines. I mean, so yeah. But I would say if Matt Canada is the type of coordinator that we've heard he is, which is an adaptable coordinator, I think he would learn where his strengths and weaknesses are. It absolutely worries me that they're thin along that offensive line because I thought that was going to be maybe a position of strength. Now all of a sudden they're thin there, and if you have an O-line in the SEC, it's a line of scrimmage league. You're
that's a great point too.
You're not gonna excel. So that is my biggest worry because I think the tight ends are going to be better. I think they're going to be used. I think a guy like Foster Moreau is going to have a good year.
Yes.
I think the receivers, you're going to see guys that you hadn't, they've been kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit. All of a sudden, they're going to be on the field. 3 or 4 wide receivers,
all highly rated players.
I think you're going to be okay there, despite some inexperience. But the O-line is the one area where I get a little concerned when you don't have the quality playing experience.
And I don't think there's any worry with the running back position as well.
No. I mean, they say Darrell Williams is playing well. We know Darius Geis, who's got that crazy jump spin, Tasmanian devil looking move where he can break one for 60 every time he touches the ball. And look, the guy everyone's talking about is Clyde Edwards-Hilaire.
Right.
So I think, look, it's LSU. Running backs, they breed running backs up there. I think they'll be all right there.
Going to phone lines in just a moment. Hang in there for me. I want to talk about the LSU defense. The LSU defense, a lot of people worried about because of so many losses to the NFL. But, man, they got some young players. I'm excited about this LSU defense because of the youth that they're bringing in. But with youth comes inexperience, but these are very, very talented players that are going to get a chance to play.
Tyrann Mathieu had youth. Eric Reed had youth.
Amen.
Morris Claiborne had youth. That is the one position at LSU, the swagger is through the roof when it comes to being able to play right away. That you go there as a DB expecting to play right away. So this is right what you expected when you were getting recruited. They said you could play right away. You're getting to play right away, and I think that's going to happen. And not just at secondary, but in the linebacker position as well.
Right? Yeah.
So I think young guys will need an opportunity to grow a little bit. But remember, the first 5 games are very winnable for LSU. So I think it's LSU. It's defense. Dave Aranda is an excellent coordinator. I think they'll be all right.
I think you make a great point. 5 games winnable early in the season. You get a chance to grow with these young players, and then you hit the meat of that schedule, which is going to be very difficult. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Let's head to the phone line. Sean Vazan of Fox 8 Sports is our guest. 866-3200 is the phone number. To Mike in Metairie. Mike, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Mike. Okay, do we have Mike? All right, let's go to Ernie in Slidell. Ernie, how you doing?
Yeah, Eric, this is my own personal. I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
This is my own personal opinion. I will see what you think about it. Mark Ingram. Last year, he had a little running on the sideline, I think, about carries.
Right.
And
Ernie, you got to turn your TV down and address us.
Because he's injury prone.
All right.
And if it shows a temper again, I think they're going to trade him.
Okay, let's talk about that. I don't think he's getting traded this year.
No.
Adrian Peterson has not proven anything in this team. I do think that within the next couple seasons, Alvin Kamara will be your every down back. You're looking at Ingram, who's going to be aging at that point, and there may be a possibility at that point to move him. But I don't see him being traded this season. Do you?
No, I think they value him. He's really improved. And, early in his career he battled injuries, but he's been pretty healthy the last couple of years.
And he's a much better blocker than he was.
Exactly, and he catches the ball better. He runs good routes for a guy, I guess, kind of his build. He's quicker than people realize. I will say this, though. If you ever listen to an interview with Sean Payton or Drew Brees and you bring up Adrian Peterson, they will always find a way to compliment Ingram as well in that answer.
Right.
Which goes to show you they understand the dynamic of how he is
the sensitivity.
A superstar. He's a little sensitive at times.
Yeah.
He's better when he's an angry player, though.
There's no doubt.
And he'll admit that
Look,
to you. Angry Ingram.
We saw that early in his career.
Angry Ingram is a very real thing, and he will gladly admit that to you. So whatever keeps him, I guess, maybe edgy, it works for the Saints. So I think they're going to want to push him a little bit because I think ultimately that you get the best Mark Ingram in that regard.
Right. Will, where are we going next? All righty. Let's get back to LSU for a moment. We'll go back to the phone lines. You mentioned the linebacker position. A lot of young players that are going to have an opportunity to really play. Look, I love Devin White, but you're talking about some young guys that were 5-star players that can have a chance to be able to play at the linebacker position immediately for this team.
And look, Dave Aranda is a linebacker defensive coordinator. When you read some of his quotes, he was saying, we have more scholarship pickers and linebackers. Clearly, he wanted to change. They went out and got 3, I believe it was, in this recruiting class, and all 3 are going to see the field, if not start, in some form or fashion. And you can't forget you got a guy like Michael Divinity from last year, really didn't play much, who I think can be a contributor from John Ehret. Love Devin White, and I believe he's only a sophomore, if I'm not mistaken. So you're talking about a young core. Hopefully, if they can grow, that can be a force for the next couple of years. Because I think the linebacker position at LSU has been very underrated. When you talk about Duke Riley, Deion Jones, Quan Alexander, they don't get enough credit.
Come on. They go to the pros and they excel.
Yeah, they don't get enough credit when you talk about how they do at the next level. So I think they'll be okay.
Right. True freshmen coming in and having a chance to contribute immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, that means a lot. And then at that Buck linebacker position, my gosh, between Chase Son and some of the other guys they got there, waiting on a guy like Arden Key to get healthy, I mean, they look like, again, they're stacked there as well.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of unknown. You talk about it. I mean, you have never seen it from a player. But if you believe in recruiting, which obviously LSU does, and you believe in getting these guys, I know Chasson was a huge get for them. No one ever recruits anymore at LSU to sit. I mean, Miles Brennan was open about possibly redshirting. That's not going to happen anymore.
Right.
So
no.
It doesn't happen unless it absolutely has to happen.
Yeah. And then, of course, you look at the defensive line. Christian Lacouture, I think, is going to be an underrated player for this year. I mean, you bring in a guy that's going to be a 5th-year senior. He's had success when he's been healthy for this team. And, a lot of people were worried about Tyler Shelvin, who they lost. And ultimately, hopefully, he'll be able to be back at LSU and playing in the next season. But they look pretty stacked on the defensive line, more than I think a lot of people give them credit for.
Yeah, and because I mean, there's some. I believe Rashard Lawrence was a player that they liked. Frank Herron's a guy that's hopefully the light bulb will come on for him eventually.
Right. That was one of the times. He was a 5-star guy.
Right? And really, you just keep waiting. I like the scheme change for Lacouture because I think he's a better 5 technique lineup over the tackle as opposed to trying to be a a Nick Fairley 3-tech pursuit up the field. I think he's better as a two-way guy. So I think a guy like Lockerture is going to be good. I think, look, it's D-line at LSU. They always seem to breed good players as well.
Right, and look, going back to coaching when you look at at Aranda and Matt Canada, two are probably the brightest coordinators that they have in college football, and obviously Coach O has taken on that persona of being the CEO of the team, and I think that's going to work hand in hand going forward. And then bringing in former coaches like Jerry Sullivan, who was a great wide receivers coach for this team. You're talking about Pete Jenkins. I think that means a lot to the coaching staff as well.
Why I get excited about Coach Orgeron and why when I was watching them last year, and I remember writing a column, and I normally write columns about the Saints, but because I went to LSU, so I followed very closely. Why I said if they don't get Jimbo Fisher, it needs to go to Orgeron. It was hard. There was a change in emotion instantaneously. It's almost like he had been groomed for this his entire life, ready for it, knew exactly what he was going to do, invited former players in, new coaching staff, and he's a Louisiana guy at the Louisiana State School. Every move he's made because you saw it, it got stale. Tiger Stadium got overrated in the latter years of Miles. I mean, the crowd's gone by halftime unless it was an Alabama game. I think that changes this year. So that's why I am genuinely excited about Orgeron, despite his past record when it comes to his time at Ole Miss. Totally different coach. I was at the Senior Bowl. Posick, who else was there? It was two other players, Duke Riley and two other, Tre'Davious White. They're all walking around doing their interviews, and somebody said, "Oh, it's Coach O," and I just happened to be kind of by him. They dropped everything and ran right to him. They all say the players gravitate to him, and I just saw that firsthand. So I think that's why I appreciated the hire of Orgeron.
Well, that bodes well going forward in terms of recruiting, which has been his prowess, and the fact that again he claims that he's learned a lot from his time at Ole Miss and his time at USC, and he gives a lot of credit to a lot of the other stops that he's been as well. Look, everybody's hoping for the best for Coach O. I just think this is going to be a very, very difficult schedule for year one for any coach to have to deal with when you play that many quality teams in the SEC on the road.
If you can start 5-0, you'll get the buzz. Then you got Florida. Florida is going to be hard, but they are beatable. The only losable game I see is Alabama. I think Florida's going to be tough. I think Tennessee's a little underrated on the back end of their schedule. But every other 5 SEC road games is always tough, regardless of if you're better than the opponent or not. But as I realistically look at this schedule, I don't think 9-3 or 10-2 is out of the question, and I'm probably a little more optimistic than most. And I just hope that the first sign of trouble, people just rip up the page and say, "Oh, this is why we shouldn't hire him," because I think he's got to be given a fair chance to succeed.
Well, I've said it all along. It's 36 months. It's 3 years. He's got to get his 3 years. He'll prove he can do it. And this is year one. So, I mean, give him a chance. He's got, again, hopefully you can hold on to the coordinators. I don't know if you're able to do that long term because they're going to have success.
Enjoy it while you got them.
But you got enjoy it while you got them. Sean Vazan, always a pleasure. Great. Thanks so much for being with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program right here on WLAE every Friday night at 10 o'clock. Also statewide, 9 o'clock on Fridays on Pelican Sports Television. We're on the Cox Cable tier now. And, of course, you can check us out on Thursdays at 10 and Saturday mornings at 2 a.m. Catch me on the radio, 990 a.m. WGSO. That's 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. weekdays. You catch us on the TuneIn Radio app. It's free download for your smartphone or tablet. Listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to Sean Vazan, who does a fantastic job for Fox 8 Sports. Always great to have him on the program. Also to the WLA production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Trey Lopez, Kenny Juneau, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Until then, have a great week. I'm your host, Eric Asher. See you soon.